Hi, welcome back to Memory Protection. It's an Apple News podcast set 20 years ago. Today, we're looking back to November 2000. I'm Josh McGrath, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Smith.
Hey, Josh. Can I borrow your Wacom tablet?
Yeah, let me just get it out from under these hay bales. All right, yeah, here it is. What do you need it for?
Oh, I'm learning this new program, Macromedia Flash, and I'm trying to make my animations look more professional.
Oh, you don't need to do that. It's Flash.
Flash! Ah, savior of the universe.
Oh, okay. Nice. All right, we have a little bit of follow-up from last month. Following up on our discussion of modern NVIDIA GPU drivers on Macs, I saw a tweet from Steve Troughton. This is a tongue twister. I saw a tweet from Steve.
Steve Troughton Smith tweets on. Tweets on the seashore.
Steve Troughton. That's my last name.
It's your last name.
Steve Troughton Smith tweeted that I got it right, and then I didn't have anything to follow it up. Steve Troughton Smith tweeted that there are no AMD or NVIDIA GPU drivers on Apple Silicon Macs. And I think this sort of puts to rest some of what we were questioning at the end of our last episode about what the future of third-party GPUs on the Mac were. I think there's still some outstanding questions because we haven't seen any professional Macs, but interesting follow-up nonetheless.
Nah, they're coming. They're coming.
You think so?
I can feel it.
All right. Moving into hot cocoa. We got a new source coming at us live from the history of the web, thehistoryoftheweb.com, which is a really great, overview. It's a timeline. It's a website that's basically a timeline of important events in web history. But on October 23rd, 2000, the KDE project launches a new browser called Conqueror. It's the version 2 release, but it's an open source browser. And
this is one of those items in the notes document that Matt adds. And I'm like, why did he add this? I don't know what this is. And I look it up and I'm like, oh.
Yeah. So Conqueror is the progenitor of what would become Safari.
WebKit.
And Apple's WebKit engine. And will power Safari and Google Chrome. And what's that new Microsoft one? Edge. That's a little different now but it's all more or less all modern browsers except for Firefox are born out of Conqueror.
Editor's note, put in some reverb here. Like Yggdrasil, the world tree, all web browsers extend from Conqueror.
Flash! Oh.
The 9 realms of web development.
Yeah, you got the HTML,
CSS,
CSS,
JavaScript, PHP,
Flash.
Flash.
We can't do it every time we say it.
Next, Apple creates a new executive position to regain education market share.
Shirley Vidot will hold the first position with the title Education Czar. And you found an interesting tidbit in this article.
Yes. Apple apparently in this time is having a little bit of sales trouble. And so they're making efforts to rectify that by reorging their sales department. And in the last month, Mitch Mandich, who is the VP of Worldwide Sales, retired. And no less than Mr. Tim Cook, VP of Worldwide Operations, is filling in for him.
Yeah, Mitch man-ditched his post.
Stupid. Yeah. Next,
Apple released the public beta in September, and people were wondering why they put the Apple logo in the middle of the screen and it's not a menu anymore. So a company named SIG Software developed an OS X interface tweak. It's called Classic Menu, and they put the classic, or they put the OS 9 Classic menu back where it belongs, and it's an actual functional menu. Again, Apple maybe saw this and thought it was a good idea.
I know it's not quite appropriate for the acquisition rejection list, but SIG Software just barely misses the cut because they did officially shut down this year. If you have a chance, go check out the SIG Software homepage. It's a lovely story, a little melancholy, but good little piece of Apple history there.
Yeah, that link will be in the show notes. November 2000, a momentous year, not just for Apple.
Echoes of the past and the future.
But for the United States presidential election. Like 2020, the presidential election was a bit of a disaster. And maybe unlike 2020, it was more of a disaster.
Yeah, somehow more of a disaster back then. For now.
I mean, I think anybody older than 20 knows about this, but Al Gore versus George W. Bush, the vote count was so close that they went to the Supreme Court, and the election was decided by the Supreme Court and wasn't actually settled until December 12th in the year 2000. Contrast that with today and all of the anxiety we've got about whether or not Joe Biden is actually going to be elected or certified, and it turns out today, as we record, the 23rd of November, it happened. So
if you'd like a really cogent and educational and entertaining and somewhat depressing breakdown of that election, I refer you to What Trump Can Teach Us About Con Law, episode 46.
Oh, did you listen to that podcast?
Yes.
I avoided it like the plague.
It's really good.
I'm sure it's really good. It's a Roman Mars chant, but I couldn't do it this year.
It's, with the exception of that one, it has been very reassuring.
Oh, good.
That one was not as reassuring.
NVIDIA, back in the news, releasing a new mobile chip. Mobile in the year 2000 means laptop, just so everybody's clear. Not
I had to recalibrate when I read that, yeah.
And there is some question that Mac compatibility may be available for this particular chipset in the future.
This is the GeForce 2 Go.
And I do believe the GeForce 2 does make it to Apple laptops in some form.
With a whopping 32 megabytes of DDR RAM.
Hell yeah.
That's almost as much as the M1 Max.
What?
Moving on. Oh, I totally missed this one.
No, you take it then.
I haven't read it.
That's the headline. That's all you need to know.
Next, OmniGraffle Beta released for OS X.
Nice.
That's it. That's the show.
Yeah, I don't. We've talked about OmniGraffle a little bit before, but I have a lot of love for this program. I used it a lot early on when I was doing site maps for websites. I don't use it as much anymore, but it's a really good piece of software, and it's sort of nice to see its beginnings. Nice. Josh, you want to move on to our primary topic for the month? Flash. Oh.
Yes. As we continue to bring you through this cavalcade of winter month
drought,
topic drought, we thought we would take the time this month to talk about somewhat of a controversial topic.
For Apple fans.
Flash. Oh. Yes, that's right. We're going to be talking about everyone's favorite fighting plugin, Future Splash.
Future Splash.
Flash, Macromedia Flash, Adobe Flash. The rise and fall, the bedrock of memes, the plugin of a decade.
The best of the worst animation in the world.
Best friends with Steve Jobs, and then he turned around and stabbed him in the back. That's right. Steve Jobs killed Flash. We're here to confirm that.
Yeah, it's on the tombstone. Here lies Adobe Flash. If it weren't for Steve Jobs, he would have gotten away with it too.
Adobe Flash killed by the coward Steve Jobs.
Wait. Chip history here this week? Chip.
Yep. This month we're talking about the history of Flash.
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning, huh?
A very good place to start. Frame 1.
Flash was started by a couple of dudes in a Macintosh user group. It's interesting. I thought that was super interesting that Flash started essentially as a Macintosh application. I didn't know that.
Did it?
But it was, I believe so. Maybe not. Well, I think maybe that's unclear. But Flash essentially was started by Jonathan Gay and Charlie Jackson, and they met at a Macintosh users group.
And they got to talking about this fantastic new computing trend called pen computing, which was, as we all know, about to explode.
Yeah. I mean, if you see a stylus, they blew it, though.
Blew it up with success. And so they started working on a piece of software to cater. So they started working on a piece of software that would cater to pen computing and its obvious graphics needs.
There were two distinct pieces of software for this. They developed a program called Smart Sketch, which was a drawing program, right?
Yep.
And then they developed a program called Future Splash, which was an animation program. It was originally part of Smart Sketch, but I guess they pulled it out and made it its own thing after the whole pen computing fad faded away.
Yes, and they had shown it to some people at SIGGRAPH, which is where everything happens, apparently. And the animators there had given them the advice, you should put more effort into the animation software because this is really good and people need this.
Right.
And that's what they did. So in 1995, they released Future Splash.
Future Splash.
And that allowed people to do digital animations with some very basic interactivity. But importantly, it had a web player component.
Yeah, they released a web plugin called the Future Splash Player. And I think to their benefit, Netscape added it to the list of their featured extensions.
Is that the list that we talked about last month, you think?
Oh, I bet you it is.
The plugins?
The XXX?
Yeah, the XXX, yeah. It all comes around.
Well, that was 2000, though. So those plugin directories have been around for a while. So this was 96 when the web was 200 websites. And having an animation plugin hooking into your browser was probably pretty novel.
But they leapfrogged from that to MSN, the deal with Microsoft.
Yeah. Microsoft hired them to build an embedded Future Splash player for the website itself.
Web TV is going to be so huge.
Yeah, and I think on the back of the success of, I just understood what you were going to saying there. Web TV is huge. So on the back of their success with the Netscape feature and the Microsoft MSN integration, Macromedia, they were having a hard time kind of getting their Shockwave player to gain some traction. So what better way to gain traction with your animation or video player than to buy somebody else's? So they bought Future Splash and they renamed it Flash, a portmanteau of Future and Splash.
And after a little bit of research, we didn't go that deep into it. It looks like Shockwave, like Flash, stuck around for a long, long time, like 2019, long time. But
that's too long.
Obviously, Flash is the star of the show here. Fast forward to 2000 when ActionScript is added to Flash. This is a ECMAScript variant, so it's like JavaScript, if you can imagine that. And this built on what was before pretty meager interactivity and opened the door to fully interactive web animations and websites. Yes, and for better or worse, that kicked off the next decade of Flash websites, Flash games, and, of course, amazing birthday cards.
Yeah, I would say you could call it a renaissance, right? Like it may not be the most aesthetically pleasing renaissance, but certainly a huge amount of content was produced after interactivity became a thing and Flash gaming became a real concern.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into some of the issues with Flash, but we should give it kudos because it really brought a level of interactivity to web that just wasn't possible before.
Right. So building on the interactive aspect of Flash in the year 2000, the introduction of Flash 6 in 2002, Macromedia started to support video. So we saw a lot more video using Flash and just plain old video rather than interactive animations or just even non-interactive animations. But this Flash now in 2002 being pretty ubiquitous, you still had to install the player, but I think most people were familiar with it enough that it was something they wanted to install. But it enabled sites like YouTube to exist.
Which in turn increased the ubiquity of Flash.
Right. So it's sort of a snowball effect. I think the popularity of the functionality that Flash could enable for the web increased its own popularity.
Enter Josh. This is really like the first topic on the show that I was very present for, very like aware of and engaged in. Flash animation and, Flash is a piece of internet software that would facilitate, interactions, entertainment, and so forth, was a huge part of my childhood and into my adolescence. Including during this time when I had really terrible access to the internet and Flash was terribly slow to use.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I looking back on this stuff that I did appreciate about it was that even though what a Flash website meant or a Flash game meant was a very sizable loading bar up front, it did also mean that once it was loaded, you could just keep using it.
Right.
It was just its own self-contained little piece of software, like any other piece of software on the system.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you didn't reload the page, which was soul crushing.
Yeah, I think super interesting time. A lot of interesting user interface design ideas explored in Flash as people just made entire websites using Flash, like very hacker sci-fi 2000 era. I don't even know how to describe it. The net like interfaces for people's websites.
Lots of crappy vector graphics.
Yeah, and I think you and I were talking about this before the show, and while this was sort of like a pivotal time for your sort of like awareness of what the internet could do, I was sort of not paying any attention to this. I was in college and in a basement making woodblock prints all day, so I was exposed. It was not really
the opposite of internet.
Yeah. I mean, I spent a lot of time on the internet, but I wasn't, I think, steeped in it in the way, a 12 to 14-year-old would be at this time.
I was on, eBaum's World, Newgrounds. I was a child of the Homestar Runner age.
Yeah. Yeah. And while I was familiar with those and had looked at those things, I was not nearly as fluent in that stuff. Newgrounds is still a bit of a mystery for me.
Well, it was odd timing because, I was becoming an adolescent, and part of the appeal of the Flash animation subculture is it's a little bit dicey at times. There's
subversive.
There's a subversive kind of like, maybe I should let my parents see this aspect to it because there's no gatekeepers. There's no network execs kind of, for the most part, saying what can and can't go into Flash animations.
Right. There's no rating systems.
Nope. So, I could go from something like Homestar Runner, which is very PG, and, they tell jokes that are above kids' heads, but still very family friendly. Go from that to like some random Flash animation about Super Mario Brothers killing people in cold blood, and go from that to a beautiful animation about a forest creature. And go from that to Happy Tree Friends about forest creatures that's
murdering each other.
Yes. I mean, it was just a pretty wild time for content. It's really different from now, I think.
I watched about 5 minutes of a Happy Tree Friends episode. One of the things that surprised me was how long they were. They were like full-length episodes, like half an hour long episodes, and just how violent and how quickly they became violent.
My wife and I were talking about this because I don't quite know how to express this, but I haven't thought about a lot of this stuff in a long time, like a decade or more.
Yeah.
And it was like going through an old toy box where you're like at your parents' house or whatever, and you're like, wow, I haven't seen this in 15 years, you know?
Yeah,
I
it's like you
forgot
open
about
a box. You open a box in your parent's basement, and there's your Nintendo 64 and your copy of Star Wars.
Yeah, and Mario's severed head. No, but like it was such a huge part of how we talked, how we told jokes, it was our culture, you know?
Yeah.
And I just totally like dropped off from it. And I was thinking like, what is my like internet lexicon now? And it's like, for better or worse, it's like Vines and this sort of short form content. And my wife was saying like, content on the internet is so quick now. It's so like, it's so efficient. And all this Flash stuff, it's so long, which is doubly weird because it was so resource intensive to make.
Every single thing had to be sort of dealt with by hand.
Literally.
Unless you learned how to tween efficiently. But even then, like...
Well, so I guess we should get into whether or not... Did you ever try to do any Flash animation?
So my Flash animation experience was limited to the web and like websites.
Because you were getting into a point where you could be working professionally, right?
Yeah, I really only dealt with Flash starting in 2008-ish. And it was really just like client work for the client wanted to do something fancier than what CSS could do at the time and do a fun hover effect or a simple animation. But I didn't really get too deep into it. I never really did anything with ActionScript or anything out of the box with ActionScript. So yeah, my experience is very limited, and I dabbled in doing some drawing and stuff, and I played around with it, but I never made anything that I thought was valuable in any way, unless it was for a client.
So I was, obviously 10 years younger, but I was getting to the point where, I had gotten my hands on like Photoshop. My friend Dustin had given me a cracked version of Photoshop 7.
Ooh, I gotta beep that out.
And I was really like a creative kid at this point. I was doing a lot of stuff. I was really interested. And I was, as I said, a huge fan of Homestar Runner. I was like, how are they making this? Well, Flash. I was like, okay, I got to get my hands on this. So we had a family friend who worked in the local university system, and they could get a discount on software. So they got me what I think was Adobe CS3, but also Macromedia Studio 8. I don't know if that timeline quite matches up, but that's what I remember.
Huh. Well, did Adobe just buy all of Macromedia?
Adobe bought Macromedia in 2005. So that's right around what I'm talking about.
So yeah, I was thinking about that, and if that's the case, they probably didn't rebrand everything. You know what? Immediately.
I think I actually was using Flash before they bought it. So that actually does make sense. So I got these two DVD or CDs or DVDs, whatever they were. They probably were not DVDs, actually. And I started using Flash. I started kind of getting into it. I tried a few things. I think the only thing I really ever finished was a model of the solar system where like all the planets would revolve around each other at different speeds, or revolve around the sun rather. But I had all these plans. I was going to make my own Homestar Runner with my own cast of cartoon characters. Shout out to Bob the Kiwi.
What?
He was my OC character. OC, Do Not Steal. Original character.
Bob the Kiwi.
I recall at one point setting up a Microsoft front page website with all these like hot zones with all the different characters in a little town. Yeah. And that was going to be the starting spot. But I just sort of, unfortunately, as is often in my life, I just sort of lost steam on it. And I didn't really go any further.
Yeah, I think that is sort of emblematic of like preteen and teen sort of like creative endeavors, though. I mean, you're figuring stuff out. I drew comic books when I was a kid, and I had my OC, the Dragonfly.
Nice.
That was my comic book
character.
Awesome. It was just like a big insect man. I never did anything with him. I just drew him all the time. I drew comic book covers with him and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I think similarly, like I drew the front page of the thing. But I didn't actually do anything else. And I did a couple of nice drawings, but I think that's sort of emblematic of like like figuring out how to be creative in a different way.
But I think we're the sort of the tip of the iceberg of a culture got started by all this, because you could look at all these videos and honestly now they do look a little dated now.
Only a little.
But at the time they were really astounding, especially because you knew it was just normal people doing them. Like just kids like you making this in their free time, figuring it out. And that was very like empowering.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it democratized is a overused term with technology, but I think it truly was that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think what you tend to see over time is that the people that really enjoy doing that kind of work and do enough of that work get better and better at that work, and then eventually start to become exceptional at that kind of work.
Well, one of the most astounding things about going back and like looking at Homestar, looking at like these classic videos like Prowley's at the River and even Here's the Earth chillin', is like these people are still working. They're still doing animations, and in many cases they're still making the stuff that we were watching back then.
Right. And it is in almost every way significantly better than it was in the mid 2000s.
And for the most part, they're not using Flash anymore, but that's for later.
Yeah. But I mean, I think Flash as a piece of software is not that hard to understand. I think
no, even me in like middle school, I could figure it out to some extent.
Right. And I think that idea of the visual timeline, right, that we saw not too far in the past with iMovie and Flash's visual timeline. I think the way you would edit video or create animations at any point before these pieces of software came out was it's in an analog fashion, and you can't see the timeline of the video. You can't see, unless you're doing hand animation and you're very practiced at it. You know, you're not like, I don't know what the technique is, but you're not sort of like paging through your pencil drawings, your pencil tests to see how these animations are going. But the computer allows you to do onion skin effects and see the animation in a timeline and get immediate feedback based on what you're doing, and the ability for you to create, iterate, and refine a project in a short amount of time.
Yeah, not to mention you could put sound in there, interactivity. You can do so much with that process there.
Right.
With so much immediacy.
My thinking that visual timeline that the computer enabled for people was a really empowering technology.
Yeah, and for as much as that technology was obvious to me through the subculture, something that Matt uncovered during research is something I didn't really know, which is that this tool was super useful to a lot of people in the animation industry, like the like legit animation industry.
Yeah, capital A animation industry.
It's been used in animation for a very, very long time.
Yep.
Basically since the beginning.
Yeah, there is a show that started in 1963 that switched to Flash animation in its fourth season in like 2014.
We'll put a link in the show notes, but there's this amazing Wikipedia page called List of Flash Animated Television Series, and it just scroll through it, and you'll recognize something.
Yeah, and I think some are very obvious, right? Like the first one in the 1990s is Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Sure.
And if you've ever watched Space Ghost, it looks like a Flash animation.
Yeah. But then there's also like Family Guy, and it's like that does make sense now that I think about it, but I wouldn't have necessarily pegged that. Everything from Family Guy to Foster's Home for Imaginary Children, Peppa Pig, Steven Universe. It's just to do a more modern reference. Like it's a funny thing. It's like there's a decade of ascendancy for Flash and then a decade of decline, but you still have some people using it.
But I think that sort of like rise and fall of Flash is Flash on the web, not Flash period.
Yes, although I will say there are a lot of people moving to things like Toon Boom and a few other pieces of software, but it is still a huge tool in the tool belt.
Yeah.
And of course, today it is now known as Adobe Animate.
Right. Yeah. Adobe sort of killed the product Flash, but has rolled it into something new called Animate, which I imagine is probably just Flash.
Should we
with some new features.
Should we perhaps get into the history of the decline now?
Oh, the decline. Yeah, sure.
1996 to 2006.
It's a pretty good run.
It's all gravy, baby.
Flash gravy.
That's my favorite gravy. But as with so many other things on the show, it all ends with the iPhone.
It's true.
Part 2.
Was it?
The tween.
One door closes, another door opens. The tween years.
Yes, of course, in 2007, the world was rocked by the announcement of the iPhone, the kickoff of the mobile age. And I'm sure a lot of you know where this is going. An open letter in 2010.
Boom.
Thoughts on Flash?
Yeah, Steve Jobs penned was it an advertisement? It was really a full-page ad in the New York Times, right?
Explaining why the iPhone and the then new iPad didn't and weren't going to run Flash.
And the complaints were not unjustified. It was a battery hog. It wasn't SEO friendly. It wasn't standards compliant. There are new and better alternatives for doing everything Flash can do.
Security concerns.
Security. Apple's security. Hey, kid, I'm a computer.
I don't know much about computers. Body massage. Yes, and there was counter arguments like, oh, Apple's just doing this for business reasons. They don't want people to hone in on the App Store. They don't want people messing with their software stack. And you know what? I think like a lot of things like this with Apple, both things are true.
I think another big one is that Flash was not a technology that had ever thought about any other input device other than mouse and keyboard.
Right. And Steve Jobs brings this up in the open letter, like it's not touch optimized at all. And this is a new paradigm. And it's like, there's like so many Flash applications and websites require rollovers. His term, think of it as like right click or hover states, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And he's right. It doesn't. And Adobe, also fair. Adobe said that they were going to come out with a mobile version of Flash. And
they did.
When though?
Well, they did it for Android, not for iOS.
Yes. And of course, I was looking back and I was like, oh, I was here for this. I was here for this argument because I was in college at the time. And you have to remember that like Flash was, as we've been saying, such a integral part of life on the web at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, in the mid-aughts, Flash became a huge tool for rendering video on the web. It was sort of the de facto way to look at videos, including on YouTube. That was a huge part of how YouTube started. Not to mention the slew of games and websites that relied on Flash. It was just a huge part of everything. And for Apple to just come and say, sorry, you can't use Flash on this new platform. It's just like, I remember at the time, this was a time when I was very much on the fence about iOS.
Mm.
I had an iPod Touch, but that was it because I had gotten it with my MacBook Pro for free.
Yeah, it didn't have Flash on it.
This was also back when Apple was like generous.
Apple's generous when they want new user adoption. How about that free year of Apple TV Plus? How's that going for you?
Yeah, great. No. I was maybe more than most people really into Flash. Like I was subscribed to newsletters about Flash animators. I was looking for new Flash games. I really used it a lot. And when I would go to my iPod Touch, I couldn't use Flash at all. And I couldn't watch this video that someone sent me. It was very frustrating.
Mm.
And then a few years down the line, you had Android people, looking down at their noses at us because they could still run Flash.
Right.
Not to, putting aside that their phones were 400 degrees and drained of battery, but they could at least make that decision to do it.
Right.
But of course, I've forgotten about all this because it's gone now. The web moved on. It's not a conversation anyone has anywhere. Flash officially is dead this year.
Yeah.
Much like SIG Software.
SIG Software and Adobe Flash, RIP.
In 2017, Adobe announced that they would be ending support by 2020. And since then we've moved to, like Steve Jobs says, new standards: HTML5, CSS3, a slew of other web technologies that have easily supplanted Flash as the bedrock of web interactivity.
Sure. Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for the sort of like, I don't know if it's quaintness, because there's certainly like a lot of garbage out there with Flash, but there's a lot of unique work that was happening in the late 90s, early 2000s with Flash. I think unique work that I think we don't see anymore.
I saw this. Someone mentioned this somewhere, and I'm sorry, I can't quote it, but like, there's this interesting idea that with the Flash games and culture, for the most part, there was no expectation of financial gain.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, I was trying to think, like, why is this not around anymore? We have the App Store, you know, we have all these great tools for making art now, better than then, you know.
Right.
People can use Unity. People can use Godot. People can use all of Apple's APIs. You know, we have like, I mean, they had YouTube then, but it's very much a huge content platform now. After Effects, Toon Boom, all these tools, and it's like you really don't see stuff like this anymore. And I think it's because I think the App Store didn't just kill Flash; it killed that mindset of like just sort of freeform, weird creativity for its own sake. Mm-hmm. Because, and I'm not, it's not a direct criticism. It's just to say, like, with that gold rush that happened with the App Store and the culture we've moved into of being a YouTuber, of having a Patreon, of having, a Discord for special members, and like just thinking about everything in terms of a business model. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of young people, they get that message now. It's just part of the like YouTube, content creator inspiration mill to say like, I'm going to inspire you to do what I'm doing. And here's how the business model works. And you have to think about a business model. And it's just like people who were making 15-minute long Newgrounds videos of like making spoofs of video games had no hope of any financial gain from that.
Right.
They spent months and months and months on that. And so many people did. So much art came out of that. So much weird crap. And some of it's like terrible, but some of it's like really good. And that spirit still lives on, of course. Of course it does. I'm not saying it's completely gone, but I'm saying like it's not in the air as much. Am I off my rocker here?
No. I think you're right on. I think your sort of like assessment of that, I think there's also like an expectation of quality as well. Like I think paired with the how much money can I make from this, or I'm going to do this so I can get something from it. Like I'm not doing this to do it and make a thing to put it into the world. I'm doing it to make it to achieve financial gain, right? Or achieve some sort of status. Also puts a sort of requirement of quality and polish on it that these animations and games didn't have and didn't have any expectation of having, right? So I think you could, your ability to be freeform and loose and explore, I think is sort of some of the charm of these videos and games and all of that thing. And those things don't exist as much anymore because, in order to keep up with my peers, the level of the bar for quality, quote unquote, is up here. It's very high.
I'm going to modify what I said, that for games, at least, a lot of where this spirit has gone is itch.io and similar websites where you have these.
That's true.
These sort of like, it's very a haven for indie games to publish whatever they have, any level of quality.
Right.
But that's not to contradict what you're saying. I agree. Like there is that commoditizing of quality, or this like, I feel this in my own work, this sense of like, I can't show this to people until it's worth selling. Mm-hmm. And it's such a mistake, by the way. It's a huge mistake because, you just go down a whole rabbit hole, but you got to show things to people. But there is this cultural sense now that everything is a product. Everything has value, and things do have value. It's not that to say that the people who put months and months of work into Flash videos, their work didn't have value. It definitely did. But there's this promise that value can be monetized. Yeah. And I think it's such a trap in a way.
Yeah, I think it will often prevent you from releasing something to the world because it is something you're interested in, passionate about, at the expense of waiting for it to be perfect or not believing that you can sell it for something.
And on the other hand, I'm not saying people shouldn't pay for art. Very much to the contrary. Like I think it's great that things like Patreon exist.
Absolutely.
I think it's great that like small creators from all walks of life are getting paid to do their thing. That's not what I'm saying. It's more that it sets up an expectation now, I guess, of like what is of the new possible, and
right.
it does have a business model conversation about everything now.
Yeah, and I think also thinking about the time in which Flash began and was becoming popular, this was a time right about and just pre-e-commerce, right? There was
right. We have Amazon.
There was no financial motivation for people making these Flash animations because there was no way for them to monetize anything.
No, there's this great GDC talk. It's called something like how to be in the game industry for 20 years with no hits or something like that. And it's this guy who's made like this like very steady stream of like RPGs. Like they're very popular where they're popular. They're not hits, but they're like people who love them. And it's paid his bills for 20, 30 years. Yep. And he tells these stories about like in the beginning, like, how do I make money off this? Like having phone calls with people where he's like getting their credit card information through the phone call. Mm-hmm. And it's like, to your point, like there wasn't an infrastructure for that. That's, that's true. There wasn't the infrastructure for that. That's a big part of it. And, that's another thing I think that the App Store set up an expectation for.
And I think it's also sort of muddled in with ad culture too, advertising, and because everybody wants to get paid, even if it's free.
Right. As they say, if it's free, you're the product.
You're the product.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting time and it's sort of an integral part of the Mac culture and computer culture in general at this time. So I don't think this should be a one-off thing necessarily.
I just didn't really I really felt like I got back to my roots with this stuff.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Well, it's good.
It's a big part of like what about all of it is it's very earnest, whether or not it's like just cheesy like video game parodies or like horrible violence or just like art. Like it's all very earnest. And I just sort of like forgot about all of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Whew. Well, sorry folks, got pretty heated there about Flash.
Heated because my computer is on fire because I'm trying to download all these Flash videos.
We obviously have a lot to say about Flash, and I think we might go back to it in the future.
Yeah, I think in these lean months, I think we'll find more interesting things to like we alluded to before. There's a lot of crazy user interface design that happened in the early 2000s to the aughts with Flash. So I think that's a good topic to explore. Certainly more animations, certainly more games. Yeah. There's got to be an episode 1 racer game out there somewhere.
Well, and this topic started, I believe it started as a suggestion from Aaron to talk about Homestar Runner, which, believe me, is a topic all unto itself.
Yeah, and I think we could certainly do that.
Homestar Runner, Newgrounds, E-Bombs World, Congregate.
Oh yeah, Congregate.
I honestly got a little overwhelmed when I got into the research for this episode because I was just like, oh my God, how are we going to cover all this? I realized that we didn't need to because we can go back to it.
I resorted to best of lists.
Me too.
As my source of like truth for this one.
We'll link a few. There's a few great articles, about like the life and death of Flash with top 10 best animations,
videos,
or games, or whatever. Speaking of world's greatest games and movies, we're going to be talking about our recommendations for Flash games and movies after the outro. So stick around for that.
Bye.
We don't say bye yet, Matt. We still have to tell them. We have to tell. Bye-bye. All right. Well, that's going to do it for November 2000.
I just put it in the notes.
You can, of course, interact with us socially using our handle on the social media interaction website called Twitter. And that's @MemProShow. Or you can send us an
email.
Or you can send us an email. using the address memoryprotectionshow@gmail.com. Our Flash website can be found after the loading bar at memoryprotection.show. Don't forget to stick around after the outro to hear us talk about games.
Hold up. I wanted to let everybody know that if you like YouTube more than podcast apps, you can subscribe to our podcast on YouTube. So every month I'll be posting a new video up on YouTube. You can subscribe there if that's what your jam is.
Yep. Finally, you YouTube podcast perverts can do your thing.
Mm-hmm. You can just search YouTube for memory protection because I don't know what the hell the URL is.
You know, it's hard to pick one thing to recommend from this era, even if we just do two categories, games and movies, which we're going to do, or at least I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's classics, right? There's Trogdor.
The Burninator.
Trogador. I mean, there's any number of Homestar Runner videos, which I could say are, would be my number one pick. There's classic bits of weirdness like Charlie the Unicorn.
I don't know that.
Charlie. It's classic, but also very strange. It's very emblematic.
Okay.
There's like things that were like really important to me as a kid, like the Final Fantasy tribute Chocobo mix Flash animations, which are like, I think looking at them now, so corny, like so cringy.
I mean, I bring it out. I mean, if it's meaningful to you, I say bring it out. This is the time for you to recommend. This is to let your Josh shine.
Or like that guy's other video, he had like these two characters, Ark and Kerrigan. I saw them today. I was like, transported. I was like, oh my God. Oh, your pie. I haven't watched these videos since I was, a freshman in high school or whatever. And they're so bad. but they were important. I have to say, though, if I'm going to pick one video I think is emblematic of the Flash animator culture, and if I can't pick Homestar because I think it's just too big of a topic, I think it's its own thing because it really does deserve that. But if I'm just doing like more like one-off things, which is not even that, is animator versus animation. You ever seen these?
I think so.
It's the ones of the stick figure fighting the Flash animator.
I think okay, I'm going to watch it right now.
There's the classic one. It's like animator versus animation. Because this guy still makes these videos to this day.
Really?
Yeah, he still makes them. But the classic one from back in the day is the first one, I think is called like Original. And it's...
Yeah, that's what I'm watching right now.
And it's like a person creates a stick figure and it comes to life and it starts fighting his mouse. And he starts like... It's so creative. It's like breaking apart the Flash GUI and using it as weapons and the paintbrush and the eraser, and it just
this is awesome. I'm watching it right now.
It's so good, so well animated, so creative, and I really think it's like it really shows that spirit very well.
He's pulling shit off the toolbar and making weapons with it.
Yes, it's so good, but it's also emblematic because this guy is still making these things, as I said, and a lot of these people still are. I think I referred to that earlier. Like some of them, like Matt sent me a video called "Prowlies by the River," which is another one I want to bring up because I watched that back in the day, and this is about like a kind of a fawn creature who's like. Kind of a jerk, just being an asshole to other animals, but it was so well animated, Matt. Like
I knew it was,
to be there, but to be there back in the day and watch that, it was unlike anything we had seen before.
I mean, that is true. And I think back in the day, knowing that was an amateur animator doing that work at the time, knowing,
And he made a few more videos, and each one was like an order of magnitude more complicated, like in terms of like animation quality.
Yeah.
He's been doing lots of other stuff elsewhere. He tried to make a video game based on those that world twice.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it failed twice. But he just like very recently made another video in the series. Brackenwood.
Oh, so those videos, the Prowleys at the River video, was made by a gentleman by the name of Adam Phillips, and Adam Phillips also is a video game, I think designer or developer that a friend of mine worked on.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and these were Flash games. So the game was Dragon Age Journeys, and I think Dragon Age Legends, and I guess they both worked together on them, which is kind of neat.
That's awesome. I wish them all the best of luck. Keep on chugging.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've been doing it for 20 years now. So
right. Well, and I a few of these, this guy included, but a few of them, I found posts where they're like, I know I haven't been active for a decade, but I've still been working on stuff. Here's something,
That's cool.
And it's just like, wow. It is kind of, for the place I am in my life, sort of creatively, it is very inspirational, to be like, okay, yeah, just keep chugging. Well,
and I think knowing that being a creative person doesn't mean necessarily being the most creative person you could be 24/7 all of the time, or knowing that you have
being
to
the most productive person, we'll say,
in
terms of producing products.
But also knowing that that creativity can ebb and flow. And I've experienced that the last 3 to 4 years of my life. I haven't personally been as creative as I'd like to be in my spare time.
My greatest wish is that you, instead of getting into Flash animation, just get back into woodblock prints.
Already done, friend. I'll send you a photograph after the recording.
There we go. Speaking of games, of course, the other side of Flash is interactivity, and boy, I talk about a whole other can of worms. Equally, how do I choose? Amazing games, amazing classic games like the Impossible Quiz. My friends would gather around the computer and be like, "Oh, choose number 4. It was wrong. Use a skip. Okay, we're running out of lives. Okay, start over." And you just got to memorize it.
Is it just like a linear quiz game that is just so long it's impossible to do in one shot?
Each question is a trick question.
Okay.
So it'll be like, click on the answer, and it'll be 4 bogus answers, and you're supposed to click on the answer, the word.
Yeah.
Click on the smallest circle, and it'll be like you're supposed to click on the dot of the eye.
Yeah.
It's all like that. Or it gets creative though, where it's like you have to get from 2 edges of the screen without touching the middle. So you realize you have to go outside of the Flash window.
Oh, that's cool.
At one point, there's one where you have to right click on the Flash player to open up the menu so that you can avoid touching it. It was so creative.
Huh.
And you would just puzzle over it. Things like that.
That's cool.
Really amazingly made games like Motherlode. I spent so many hours playing that. It's like a mining game. It's the predecessor to SteamWorld Dig. It's the same. I love that game. It's the same. I'm almost certain that they based it off Motherlode, if it isn't the same people. Also well-made games, but not fun to play. Things like QWOP.
Oh, I loved QWOP.
Classic games from Bennett Foddy.
Yeah.
Classic indie games classic runner games like Cannabalt and Dynarun started as Flash games.
I totally forgot all of these games were Flash because I knew QWOP and Cannonball as iOS games. And I knew at the time, Flash is just it just feels so old, right? And the iPhone games feel old, right?
Well,
Cannonball was an early iPhone. Right.
And I remember being like, oh, I love Cannonball. Wait, it's on the iOS store. I can put it on my iPod Touch. Awesome. I could play
Flash games. That was also when Adobe would let you convert Flash to Air to iOS too.
Is that their Flash packager or their Adobe packager?
Yeah, I forgot what the AR technologies were. I think it was like a bundler for like iOS and like CSS, JavaScript, and HTML to make like Flash-like apps. But I think there was conversion tools to go from Flash to AR.
Which Apple tried to block until there was grumblings about antitrust investigations.
Yeah.
Remember, kids, you can make Apple do whatever you want if you threaten antitrust investigations.
I think I found the impossible quiz. The Internet Archive recently, like this month, I think just uploaded Flash software library, and it is available to play on the web, just like the old Mac OS emulators on the web.
Oh, really?
Exist. I sent you this link.
Did you? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you did.
No, you replied to it, but I did find the impossible quiz, so I will play that after we're finished.
It's fun. You could put a few minutes into it, and you'll get the gist of it.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick one game that I just loved, and I don't think many people even know about it, although more people might know about it now. It's a game called Captain Forever. You ever play this?
Nope. I'm looking it up though.
It's a very elegant little game, sort of an asteroid-style space shooter. But when you destroy an enemy, they explode, and you can take their parts and either bolt them onto your spaceship or replace your own parts. And that's like the chassis, the guns, the thrusters.
Oh,
So you build your own ship as you go, and you increase it. It's like capabilities. It's so it was. I remember stumbling upon this game back in the day and just being so enthralled with it. And
it's available on Steam.
yeah,
now.
they kept on making it. It's part of the joke of the name is like that the developer was just kept working on it forever, Captain Forever.
Mm-hmm.
It has there's a trilogy anthology on Steam, and then there's a spin-off game called the Captain Forever Remix. That's sort of like more cartoony. It looks fun. Anyway, that was my favorite, but it's hard to choose.
You don't have to choose.
How about you, Matt? What's your flavor?
So my flavor is a little bit more recent. It is the television show Star Trek Lower Decks. It is a 2020 animated Star Trek series, and they used Flash to do it. And it's 1, really well animated, 2, very funny, and 3, very Star Trek. Like it is sort of like this weird, impossible task to make an animated show about Star Trek feel funny. And, obviously, over the course of our research in this conversation, we realized that Flash was a lot more than just web games and animation, that it is used in the animation industry for shows. Other shows like Archer used it, which totally makes sense in retrospect. And even like watching Lower Decks, like you can see it. Like you can see that like wobbly Flash style, like it's pretty evident, but the quality is really good. And I think not just the quality of the animation, but the quality of the writing and the attention to detail about that Star Trek universe. Like, they figured out a way to use the software and not entirely hide it, but create something great using everything else, despite the limitations the software provides.
You just really sold me on this rather, because I've been telling you. I know, but that you just unlocked it for me, because I realized something that was turning me off to it is I don't know if I want Star Trek to be funny.
Oh yeah, you do.
But that bit about how it still captures that Star Trekness, I'm into that.
Yeah. It also, I know I've recommended the Discovery to you. While it is not a comedy show, it is funny in a way that most Star Trek.
Well, that's the thing. Star Trek is unintentionally funny. This is intentionally funny, but they do it in a great way. It's like a tension reliever funny in sort of I don't know. Star Trek has always had that little bit of humor running through it here and there. Riker playing the trombone, sitting on chairs with.
Yeah, for sure. It's a little bit more sort of out in the open. It's 2020 funny, I think, if that makes sense to you.
It does. Looking at the animation style, I could feel it.
And it also obviously sort of kind of feels like Rick and Morty too, which is also Flash adjacent. Go for Lower Decks. and stay for Discovery if you go to the CBS All Access, because everything is excellent except for Picard. Don't watch Picard.
All right, well, that's it. Goodbye.
Oh.
Do you have another Flash thing, Matt?
Josh, I got one more thing.
Is it a Flash-related thing?
Hey, Josh, you know where I can find some sailors? That's right, everybody.
No. Cue the music.
It's the 20th anniversary of the U.S. release of Shenmue, Yu Suzuki's action-fighting RPG adventure masterpiece about a young man named Ryo Hazuki in his quest to avenge his father's death at the hand of Lan Di. Searching for the twin Phoenix mirrors, Ryo must meticulously explore his local community of Yokosuka, Japan, in the year 1989. So ingrained is this game into my memory. I remember all of these details. This game is amazing. And if you agree with my recommendation about Star Trek Lower Decks, I urge you to play this game.
If only I had a Dreamcast to do it on.
You do have a Dreamcast. I gave you one.
Oh, man. I promise you, Matt, one day, if our podcast ever becomes popular enough to have a Patreon, we'll do an episode.
I mean, yeah, sure. I think that's a great idea.
I promise you, one day, if someone pays me, I will play this game.
You can play this game on the PS4, Josh.
Oh, the first one?
Yeah, the first and second came out as a little remaster a couple years ago.
Do you like those remasters?
They're barely remastered. It's the original game with updated controls to make them a little bit easier. Because the second game had better controls than the first, so they just ported those to the first one, and they upscaled it. But I don't know that they actually changed any textures or anything. So,
nice.
I actually own this game, but I do not own a PS4. So I will send it to you if you will play it. Or we could also just wait for the Patreon.
That feels very... Oh, man. If you sent it to me, I feel like I would have to play it because I feel so bad. You've had this game for so long, you can play it. And then I just have it.
I mean, it's fine. I'm not... If you want to play it, let me know. I'll send it to you. But
why didn't... You know what? Send it to me.
All right. I'm going to make my note.
Okay. It's so rare for me to finish a game, though. We'll see. That's a very much a maybe. I'll give it a shot.
Shenmue is a 20-hour game.
Really?
Yeah, it's not that long.
I feel like you've spent that long talking about it. He's speechless, folks. He's so insulted.
Well, I mean, really, this is the last time I'm going to talk about it until 2002 when the second one comes out.
We both know that's not true.
Shush your mouth. But then, Josh, think about it. 2002 to 2019, when Shenmue 3 comes out, you're going to get a 16-year reprieve.
Just like the fans.
Shenmue. Yep.
I like rusty spoons.
We got to make that one in there for Matt B. Put a little clip in
Is
there.
Matt B a Salad Fingers fan?
Oh, yeah. He loves Salad Fingers.
I fucking hate Salad Fingers so much.
I do, too.
I can't.
It's the
I couldn't
worst.
watch it then. I cannot watch it now.
I like it when the red water comes out.
I like the shearing of the rust on my salad fingers.
Oh, I hate it.
Salad Fingers. This one goes out to Maddie B.